Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I am the guy who picked Andrei Arlovsky to defeat Fedor Emelianenko. And I'm here to talk about Azat Maksum making his return to the UFC fighting Charles Johnson. Charles Johnson is 33 years old, 13 and 6 as a pro, and he's got 2 inches of height over 29-year-old Azat Maksum, who is 17 and 0 as a pro and has the same reach as Charles Johnson. Charles Johnson, his defining trait as a fighter is his durability. He's got 6 losses. All 6 of them are by decision. I don't expect this guy to be finished. That's the number one trait of his that I'm sure of. He's had some tough losses, all 6 of them by decision. A lot of them him being out wrestled, straight up neutralized and controlled. He suffers from Nick and Nate Diaz syndrome, where he's got a lot of offense, but that one gaping hole is he can be controlled, and he's not as physically strong as a lot of these guys that are shorter wrestlers than him. But Charles Johnson, he's a well-rounded fighter with great cardio and incredible toughness. Which the 6 decisions should indicate that he's pretty tough. But check out his fight against Brandon Royval, who just challenged for a UFC title a month ago or whatever. And he lost to Brandon Royval in the LFA. It was a 3-round fight. That's one of his decision losses. He got the shit kicked out of him. Got really hurt in rounds 1 and 2. Was doing well early on, but then in the middle of round 2, the tide turned, and I thought he was going to be TKO'd. Royval was all over him and had a lot of great moments against Charles Johnson. It looked like he was on his way out, and Charles Johnson survived, kept himself in the fight against one of the most dangerous fighters at flyweight, and he was the last man standing. He actually made that a very close fight in the end, the Brandon Royval fight. And that's another one of his traits as well. Not as strong as his durability, but he has tenacity. He has cardio and grit, which is what you need to even have tenacity in the first place. And he's the guy that had, again, in those 6 decision losses, I think he's won round 3 in 3 of them. Brandon Royval against Rafael Estevam in the last fight. Estevam had a lot of success in neutralizing him and controlling him, but he wasn't able to do it for the full 15 minutes. And when Charles Johnson was able to fight freely, he was the one taking it to Estevam in the end. And that was a good look, but still, the bad look was the first 2 rounds. And that's the story in the majority of his losses. He can be controlled, and here he's fighting Azat Maksum, who's a well-rounded fighter, but certainly in that well-roundedness has wrestling, and he has some good control skills. I don't know if he's going to have success against Charles Johnson for the full 15 minutes, but I know at points he's going to have advantages just on strength alone once he gets a hold of him. Charles Johnson's a very well-rounded fighter, 6 knockouts, 3 submissions, 4 decisions. His best knockout comes in round 5 over Carlos Mota. TKO'd him in a close fight, but one that Charles took over down the stretch into the championship rounds. He's not going to be known ever for his submission ability, but he's got good submission ability, great submission defense as well, but some nifty chokes if you leave an opportunity for him. And his work rate is his best strength offensively. I think his work rate, if you are able to fight on the outside, if he's able to fight on the outside with you, he will outwork you, switching stances, ripping you up to the body and the head, and he likes those long, rangy attacks, deep kicks to the body. He can control the striking and have a lot of success against probably anybody in the division. Here he's fighting Azat Maksum, who's got a pretty record right now, 17 and 0, a perfect record, and he is 1 and 0 in the UFC. Azat Maksum has 5 TKOs, 7 submissions, and 5 decisions. Got his last decision in his last fight over Tyson Nam in the UFC. It was a really close fight. Tyson Nam, I thought, did a good job keeping the fight standing, which Azat Maksum, I don't know how many takedowns he attempted, but he attempted a few. And he was forced to fight on the feet against one of the most dangerous flyweights, and I still thought he won the fight. He did a really good job outpointing Tyson, and not with volume either, just with the better strikes. But Tyson Nam was the last man standing, as I like to say in that fight, by winning round 3. He was the fresher fighter, and that is one of the few distinct traits of Charles Johnson. So Azat Maksum's got to manage himself here. If he finds himself in round 3 and he's a little tired, I expect Charles Johnson to definitely be winning that fight, winning that round. And honestly, as of now, regardless of how tired he is or whatever, if you told me these two guys were in round 3, I'd favor Charles Johnson based on the Tyson Nam fight alone and every one of Charles Johnson's fights. But there is more to Azat Maksum than his debut. Again, he's a well-rounded guy, got good power, good knockout power, and great, well-rounded skills on the ground. If he can take you down, he can control you. That's going to be the case here. And submission-wise, this guy, I've seen him in 2 submissions, really tight submissions in 2 of his decision victories. One triangle and one armbar to this guy Akhmayev. And the armbar especially was the tightest submission I've ever seen. One of them that didn't get a tap, and he kept his composure. Azad kept his composure, didn't panic when one wrong move could have cost him his arm, and pulled himself out of both spots. And in the end, ended up grinding both guys with a lot of top control and work down the stretch. So I think Azat Maksum has a lot more upside. There's no telling how it's going to go when he fights Charles Johnson, especially how it's going to look in round 3 because he hasn't fought so many UFC level fighters. But I think he's going to win this fight. I think the smart pick is Azat Maksum neutralizing Charles Johnson with wrestling in the way that Rafael Estevam and everyone else has done, and surviving if and when Charles Johnson turns the tide, kind of like Estevam did. But Azat Maksum has looked too well-rounded for me to pick against him right now. Charles Johnson has that one gaping hole, and even though I'm sure he's doing a lot to patch up that hole, I don't think it's going to work for him here. So Azat is the pick. It's not the bet, though, because Azat Maksum is minus 185, which I actually like, but when you can trust that his only path to victory is a decision, you wait for the prop. And his only path to victory is decision or a cut or something, an injury. But yeah, Charles Johnson, I trust his durability more than I trust any other trait in this whole matchup. So Azat Maksum being the pick, I can wait till the decision line opens, and that'll be the bet. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit, and check out my other videos.